Masechet Nedarim Daf Lamed Aleph. We're going to see a few Mishnayot today, and they have the common theme that someone makes a vow using somewhat ambiguous language, or language that's often used in a way that's not literal. And therefore we want to see, does it include everybody literally in that category or not? So here's the first. Hanoder mishofteh Shabbat. Someone says, I am not going to have any benefit from those who keep Shabbat. So who keeps Shabbat? Asur b'Yisrael ve'asur be'kutim. He's prohibited from any Jew, because Jews are commanded to rest on Shabbat, so he cannot have any benefit from them. But also kutim. Kutim is the way the Mishnah refers to Samaritans. Samaritans are the remnants of the northern 10 tribes, mixed in with some other people from other countries that were brought in. So they're called disparagingly kutim, kuta, another different and outside land, meaning foreigners. If they really were all kutim, then they would not be ethnically Jewish, but some of them are a mixture of the original 10 tribes. Okay, there's a big question about the Samaritans. Are they considered Bnei Israel or not? They actually don't consider themselves Jewish, because Jewish is Yehudim from the south and they're from the north. But they do consider themselves to be the original 10 tribes, and therefore part of the Brit of the Torah. The Jews, however, did not consider them for the most part. Now there's a machloket in the Talmud whether they converted and whether their conversion was valid, because it says in Sefer Melachim that they were afraid of lions because that were in the north of Israel, and so they converted. So according to one opinion, their conversion is valid, and so therefore they are actually Jewish. According to another opinion, their conversion was not valid because it was done only out of fear. All right, the main point is that the Samaritans do keep the 5 books of Moses, and the things that they do keep, including Shabbat, they generally keep even in a more stringent way. So therefore, if you want to talk about those who keep Shabbat, the Samaritans do keep Shabbat. And so, whatever you want to categorize them, they do keep Shabbat on according to their interpretation. And therefore, if someone says, I will have no benefit from those who keep Shabbat, that will include Samaritans. Now, me'ochle shum asur b'Yisrael v'asur be'kutim. Someone says, I'm not going to have benefit from anyone who eats garlic. That also includes not only Jews, but also Samaritans. Now, why are people eating garlic? It seems as talking about eating garlic on Friday night, because garlic was an aphrodisiac. And so from the time of Ezra, there was a takana, an institution that Jews should eat garlic so that they will perform a mitzvah and be with their spouses on Friday night, mitzvah night. So that's the idea of eating garlic. So since that's a common practice for Jews, I don't know about their breath after eating garlic, but apparently this was a positive thing. Okay, now how about the Samaritans? According to the Mishnah, the Samaritans also have the custom of eating garlic for Friday night. This is curious because according to most sources, it would seem that Samaritans do not permit marital relations on Shabbat. We know for sure the Dead Sea sect prohibits relations. Karaites also do, and I'm trying to do a little more research to find out about Samaritans, but I don't believe that they do permit relations. So why would it say here that they're included in those who eat garlic? We're not sure. Perhaps they eat garlic for some other reason. Maybe it's just part of their Friday night food and makes Friday night special. And so they like garlicky food. So that's a way of saying they have Oneg Shabbat and keep Shabbat. Maybe it's included in that. Or maybe Samaritans at different times did different things. And maybe back then they did perform marital relations, but maybe not in other times. Okay, that's case number 2. Case number 3, Me'olei Yerushalayim asur b'Yisrael umutar be'kutim. Someone says, I am going to be prohibited, all benefit from those who go up to Jerusalem for holidays will be prohibited to me. That surely will include Jews, because Jews go to Jerusalem. That we consider that the holiest place. But Samaritans certainly do not. That's one of the fundamental differences between Jews and Samaritans. Jews consider Jerusalem to be the capital, whereas Samaritans, who are from the north, consider that Had Gerizim in Shechem is the holiest place, and that's where they had their temple was built. So that certainly would not they would not consider they would not be considered in the category of those who go up to Jerusalem. In fact, one of the main reasons that the Samaritans reject Nevi'im and Ketuvim is because Nevi'im and Ketuvim talk about Yerushalayim all the time, right? King David and so on, praising Yerushalayim throughout Tehillim, and so therefore they reject those books. 5 books of Moses, the Chumash only does not mention Yerushalayim by name, but just Hamakom Mashiach, the place that God will choose, leaving it ambiguous, and they interpret that to mean Had Gerizim. Okay, so this is a fascinating Mishnah, not only regarding Nedarim and the way people use language, but also a little bit about the role of the Samaritans and some of their practices and how the rabbis related to those Samaritans. Good. My Shovtei Shabbat. Now we want to understand, what does that mean, those who rest on Shabbat? Ilema mekayeme Shabbat, my iria bekutim, afilu goyim nameh. If it just means that those who fulfill Shabbat, is it only Samaritans that fulfill Shabbat? Even some Gentiles keep Shabbat. What Gentiles are keeping Shabbat? This might be referring to some Christians, even though nowadays Christians do not keep Saturday. They do something on Sunday, but they don't, they still drive and all that. But in the early Christianity, there were many non-Jews who took on Christianity, and they took on an observant type of Christianity that was based on Judaism, and they even included observance of Shabbat on Saturday, a serious observance. So this could be talking about some non-Jews who were keeping Shabbat, and so if it means anyone who keeps Shabbat, then one should also be prohibited from getting benefit from those observant Christians. You have even today some Seventh-day Adventists who are actually keep a lot of laws, not exactly up to halacha, but they are pretty serious about not working on Saturday. So it seems like they should be included also. Ela memisuvim al haShabbat. So we said, no, we're not talking about anyone who happens to rest on Shabbat, rather only those who are commanded to keep Shabbat. And that is not true for non-Jews, whether they're Christians or whatever. They're not commanded, but Jews and Samaritans are commanded. Samaritans, they follow the Torah itself, and perhaps they're considered good converts, and so one way or another they do it because of the commandment of the Torah. Okay, now asur b'Yisrael mutar bekutim amai v'ha mitzuvim ninhu. Hold on, the last clause says if someone says I'm prohibited to have benefit from those who go up to Jerusalem now, and that includes Jews, but it does not include Samaritans. Why? Aren't Samaritans also commanded to go up to Yerushalayim? In other words, they don't follow this commandment because they disagree with it, but technically, if you say that they are, in fact, proper converts or part of the Jewish people in some way, if they're legitimately part of Bnei Israel, and that's what you just said, that they are commanded to keep Shabbat, then you would have to say also that they are commanded to go to Yerushalayim, even though none of them do it, and they're against it, and they interpret the Torah differently, but nevertheless they are commanded, so they should be prohibited. In the third case, Amar Abaye misuveh ve'oseh katane. Abaye said, in order to be included in such a vow, one has to be commanded and actually perform the mitzvah. And so, in the two first ones, betarte babe kamaita, Yisrael v'kutim misuvin ve'osin goyim hahu de'abde osin ve'na misuvin. So, in the first two cases of someone keeping Shabbat or eating garlic, they're both, which is also related to Shabbat. Then Jews and Samaritans are both commanded to keep Shabbat, and they both do perform and fulfill the laws of Shabbat. Whereas some non-Jews, even if they do keep Shabbat, but they're not commanded to do so, so they are excluded from the category. Whereas those who go up to Jerusalem, Be'olei Yerushalayim, Yisrael Mesuvin ve'osin, Kutim Mesuvin, the Jews are commanded to go to Jerusalem and they fulfill that commandment, so they would be included in the category. Samaritans are commanded because they are part of Torah observance. Nevertheless, they don't agree with that interpretation and they don't fulfill it, and therefore they would not be included in that category. All right, really fascinating. Now, next Mishnah. Kunam sheni nehene libnei Noach mutar b'Yisrael v'asur b'mot ha'olam. Someone says that all benefit from bnei Noach is prohibited to me. Now, bnei Noach technically should refer to every human being, because every human being is a descendant of Noach. But nevertheless, we say it's permitted to a Jew, and he's prohibited only from non-Jews. So this is strange. How come Jews are not included within bnei Noach? So that's what we ask. Didn't the Jews, why are Jews excluded from the category of Noach? After all, aren't we all descended from Noach? And the answer is, Kevan kadash Abraham itkeru al shemeh. So no, once Abraham was sanctified and chosen to be special, to be different from everybody else, now Jews are called by the children of Abraham, and no longer are called Bnei Noach. So even though technically, biologically, yes, everybody's Bnei Noach, but that's not what the term means anymore. Similarly to the way you say Kohen versus a Levi. Now technically, all Kohanim are also from the tribe of Levi. So when you say Levi, shouldn't you include Kohanim? No, we don't say that, because once Kohanim are chosen and separated, then the word Levi means those from Levi and not Kohanim. Okay, same thing here. Good. Next Mishnah. Sheni nehene lezera Abraham. Asur b'Yisrael mutar b'mot ha'olam. And someone says, I am not going to have any benefit from the descendants of Abraham. In that case, he's prohibited to any Jew, but he's permitted to have benefit from non-Jews. Okay, fine. Now, now we ask, well, wait a second. The descendants of Abraham includes Ishmael. So if he says a vow against the descendants of Abraham, shouldn't that include also those who are descendant from Ishmael? The answer is no. Ki b'Yitzchak yikareh lecha zara. Right, Parashat Hashavua, because Hashem told Abraham, I am going to only call Yitzchak. In Yitzchak, that seed shall be called in you, and not Ishmael. Right, his sending away of Ishmael was not simply that he's not going to see him anymore, but actually that was a legal disowning of Ishmael. We know from the ancient Near East, when you send a child away with food, with money, then you're not disowning them. And that's why Abraham sends them with only a little bread and water. That's a legal act of disowning. So sorry, you are not part of their legacy anymore, but rather only Yitzchak, he's going to carry on the berit. So therefore, Zera Avraham means, in fact, only Yitzchak and not the Ishmaelites. Ketiv. Ha'ika Esav. Hold on. If you say the descendants of Abraham, fine, that means only Yitzchak. But what about the children of Yitzchak, which are Yaakov, and also Esav? So if I say I'm not going to benefit from Abraham, that should also include the category of Esav, who in Midrash are associated with Rome and Christians. And so wouldn't that include all those people? The answer is no. Be Yitzchak velo kol Yitzchak. Then the same pasuk doesn't say ki Yitzchak yikareh lecha, Yitzchak will be called, but rather within Yitzchak. Not all the descendants of Yitzchak, but only within some of the descendants of Yitzchak, that will be called your Zera, your descendants, because the Brit will go through Yaakov and not through Esav. And therefore, when someone says, I'm not going to benefit from Zera Abraham, it doesn't mean all the biological children of Abraham, but rather only those that carry on the Berit. Those are called Zera. Good. Next Mishnah. Sheni nehene miYisrael lokeach beyoter umocher bepachot. If someone says, I am not going to benefit from any Jew, then he can, and he still wants to do some commerce with Jews. He can, as long as he buys high and sells low. So that way, if he buys if he overpays, so then the person making the vow is not receiving benefit; he's actually giving benefit to the seller. That's permitted. And when the person who made the vow sells, he should sell very cheaply, and that way he's giving a benefit to the buyer, but the vower himself is not receiving benefit. And either way, he does not receive benefit from a Jew, so that's okay. Now we have the opposite case. She'Yisrael nehenin li. A person makes a vow, I don't want any Jew to have benefit from me. In that case, he can receive benefit but can't give benefit. So it will be the opposite then. Lokeach bepachot. He can buy cheaply, and he can sell more than the normal price, mocher beyoter, right? Because if he sells for higher than the regular price, then that's a detriment for the other guy, the guy who's buying it. And that would be permitted because he said, I don't want any Jew to benefit from me. That Jew is not benefiting from him. Rather, the person making the vow is benefiting by selling at a higher price than normal. And that's permitted. Now, in the second case, ve'en shoma'in law, nobody would listen to him because if it's for the detriment of the other guy, right? No one's going to want to go and if he buys for less, no one's going to want to sell him things that are less than the market price. So he can ask for it, but no one's going to give into it. And if he tries to sell something for higher than the market price, no one's going to want to buy from him. And so he's really not going to help him unless he's able to find some sucker that will give him a deal. Sheni nehene lahen vehen li yehene le'omot ha'olam. If he says includes both, I am not going to give any benefit to any Jew, and I don't want anyone else, any Jew, to give benefit from me. I prohibit them to me. Then he cannot buy or sell, not high, not low, to any Jew, but he can go and do commerce with non-Jews at any price that he wants, because he only said mi Israel. All right, that's the Mishnah. Now, Amar Shemuel, halokech kelim min ha'uman lebakero, v'nehenas biyado hayav. If someone goes and you go to a store, a glasses store, right? And you're checking out the merchandise, you're examining it, you're trying it on, and then by mistake it breaks, right? That person is liable, right? You broke it, you bought it. Okay, why? Alma kasavar hanaat lokeach. He must be that Shemuel thinks that there is benefit to the buyer, right? The prospective buyer. He receives benefit from having a showroom there, and the fact that he can come in and he can examine, try on, that is a benefit to the buyer. Because he's receiving benefit, we're going to treat him not like a watchman, because a watchman, if you give me something to watch, here, just hold on to this for a few minutes, and then it breaks, I am not liable. As opposed to a borrower, if I rent something from you, or if I borrow something from you, and I can use it, since I can use it, I'm deriving benefit from it. If it breaks, even by mistake, I am liable, right? If I go and say, can I borrow your lawnmower? And then it breaks while I'm using it, then I am liable. So in this case, we consider the fact that I'm in your store, your showroom, I'm trying out your glasses and they broke, I am deriving benefit from the possibility of trying it out and examining it and potentially buying it. And therefore, when it breaks in my hands, I am liable. Okay, so that's the principle that we learned from Shemuel. Now we're going to ask a question against Shemuel from the different clauses in our Mishnah. Tenan, she'eni nehene mi Israel, in the very first clause, when the person vows and says, I will not receive benefit from a Jew, that person can sell at a cheap price, mocher bepachot, because since he made a vow, I'm not going to receive benefit, but he's selling for a cheap price, so actually the buyer is the one benefiting. That's okay. Aval shaveh b'shaveh lo, but we can infer from the Mishnah that if I sell it for an equal value, then it's not allowed. Now v'i hana'at lokeachi afilu shaveh b'shaveh, but if based on the principle of Shemuel that when there's a regular market price, there's always a benefit built into the buyer. The buyer is always happy to have the opportunity to buy, and that's worth something. then even if I sell at a regular price, that should still be permitted, right? Once again, I made a vow. I say I'm not going to benefit from any Jew, and then I sell you this item at normal price. So who's receiving the benefit? Well, it's the buyer, because he has the opportunity to buy it. The seller is not getting anything. I mean, I'm getting money, but I'm also giving away the merchandise, and so the net benefit is to the buyer, according to Shemuel. So why do you have to say that I have to sell for less? How about just say equal? So we answer, Matnitin bizibina diremi al apeh. Oh, this Mishnah must be talking about merchandise that lies in his face. In other words, it's merchandise that's been sitting around in my store for a long time, and there's not a lot of demand for it. And so I take these items and say, you know what? I'm so happy to sell it, because if you don't buy it, then it's going to sit around here for another year or two. And so in that case, yeah, usually a buyer benefits when it's something that is regularly sold. But if it's an item that has low demand, then the seller actually is very happy. He gets the benefit. So that's what we're talking about. I made a vow that I will not receive benefit, if I would just sell it to you as at market price, and it's an item of low demand, then I'm actually receive benefit from you buying it. And that's why the Mishnah has to say that it means when I sell it at a lower price, so I'm not benefiting from it. Okay, fine. Now we're going to say the whole Mishnah will the whole Mishnah work if it's talking about things that are low demand? Let's see. Imken emaresha. Look at the very first case of the first case. Lokeach beyoter. If I say I'm not going to benefit from anyone, I can still buy from you for a higher price, because then I'm not benefiting from you. You're actually benefiting from me. So if it's something of low demand, then that would not make sense, because then for me buying, well, I would have to buy at a higher price. Even if I buy it at a normal price, since it's something of low demand, I, the buyer, am actually giving you a benefit, and that should be permitted. So why did the Mishnah have to say at a higher price? Furthermore, ve'od emasefa, also this assumption will not work with the second clause in the Mishnah that said she'Yisrael nehenin li. If I make a vow the other way around, I'm not going to give any benefit to any Jew. And there, the Mishnah says, lokeach bepachot umocher beyoter, that if I want to buy something, I have to buy cheaply, less than that, so that you don't get any benefit. And if I want to sell to you, I have to sell to you at a high price, so you don't get any benefit. And and if it's something that is difficult to find, that is of low demand rather, then afilu shaveh b'shaveh, then even if it's at the market price. If I sell you something at market price that has low demand, then me, the seller, I'm the one benefiting from it. And that is permitted, because in this formula, I only said that, no, you can't benefit from me, but I can benefit from you. So why does it have to say, mocher biyoter, that has to raise the price? If it's talking about a low demand item, it could even be the same price. So this assumption that you use to resolve in the first clause will not work for the sefa, and not even for the other half of the resha itself. So we answer, no, sefa bizibina harifa. Oh, the second clause is talking about not something that has low demand, but the opposite, a hot ticket item. That literally harifa, it's a hot thing that there's a lot of demand for it. And when there's a lot of demand, so when there's a lot of demand, then the benefit is to the buyer. The buyer is like, oh, can you reserve one for me? Oh, thank you for selling this to me. It's very hard to find. Right, a lot of the stores are all out of it. And so that would be the benefit is to the buyer. So that would help explain just only the last answer the last clause, that if I said Yisrael nehanin li, that I make sure I vow that no one can benefit from me, and then I sell something at market price, but it's something that is hard to find. So in that case, I would have to sell it at a higher value, because if I sell it at an equal value, then the buyer is benefiting from it. Okay, so we could say now that Resha is when it's a low demand item, the Sefa is a higher demand item, but it still does not work, because Yachi lokeach bepachot, if in the Sefa why, if I'm buying, I said that you can have no benefit from me, and now I'm going to buy something from you, and it's a hot ticket item, and why does it have to be that I buy for less than the value? Even if I buy for equal value, I benefit because it's so hard to find. And so that we wouldn't have to say lokech bepachot, afilu shaveh b'shaveh. אלא מתניתין בזבינה מסיעה ובדשמואל בזבינה חריפה. So rather, this whole line of thinking will not work. I think that was kind of obvious from the start, that if you, right, that even within the resha or even within the sefa, if you say it's talking about a low demand or high demand, then it's not going to work out. So that is an impossible interpretation. Rather, we abandon that and we say the entire Mishnah is talking about average sale, things that are, like just, milk, eggs, things that are normally available, not low demand, not very high demand, and therefore the market price by itself benefits both sides. And that's why in none of these cases can you do a market price, but rather it would have to be higher than normal or lower than normal. So we're leaving the Mishnah out of this. The Mishnah just leave as Peshat, not talking about any unusual circumstances. And what about Shemuel, right? We still did have a question, a challenge to Shemuel. Oh, Shemuel is talking about a hot ticket item. So once again, when Shemuel says, you broke it, you bought it, why? How come if I buy it, so I'm just a buyer, I didn't acquire it yet? Why should I'm checking something out in your store? I'm checking out some watches in your watch store. You're the craftsman, and now as I'm examining it, I broke it, so I have to pay. Why? So Shemuel said, because the buyer is getting a benefit. Why is the buyer getting a benefit? Now we're explaining it. Shemuel would apply only not to an equal exchange, because an equal exchange, you're benefiting, I'm benefiting equally, and so it shouldn't be considered that I'm renting it or anything. But if the buyer, if it's something in high demand, right? Everybody's out of this watch, and here you have one. So now it's about my benefit to have the opportunity to buy it. So because of that benefit that you are giving me, that is kind of like I am a borrower. Like if I borrow your lawnmower and I can use it, either I benefit from it and it breaks, I'm responsible. So too here, for the opportunity to check out the watch and possibly buy it is a benefit that I'm getting while I am examining it. And therefore, if it breaks under my watch, I am liable. Okay, so now we understand Shemuel's law, and it reconciled with our Mishnah. Tanya kevate de Shmuel, we have a baraita that supports Shemuel. Halokech kelim min hatagar l'shageran lebet hamiv. Interesting case of I go to the watch store and I get some items to bring to my father-in-law. I want to give my father-in-law a present, and so I think he'll like this watch. And so I take it from the owner, and from the store owner. Listen, if my father-in-law, this is them, my in-laws like this item, and then I will pay you for it, right? How much is $100? Let me take it, show it to them. If they like it and keep it, then I'll pay you the full amount. But if not, then I'll bring back the watch and I will pay you the amount of benefit that I received from offering it as a gift, right? They'll say, no, we don't need a watch. It's fine. Thank you for thinking of us. We appreciate it so much. So how much is that worth to offer a gift that isn't accepted? Well, you know what? That's worth $10, say, right? Then they're gonna like me better, and they'll do me a favor afterwards. So that's worth $10. So if they end up not liking it and I return it, then I'll give you $10 for the benefit of being able to use it for a while and show it to them. Now, in that case, in that story, let's say it breaks on the way. Depends which way. If it breaks on the way from the shop to my in-laws' house, then I am responsible because I have this item. I'm deriving benefit from it. It's like a lawnmower that I'm deriving benefit because my benefit is I can go and show it to them. And so therefore I am liable even if it breaks by mistake. B'chazara patur mipnei shehu kenoseh sachar. But on the way back, that's it. I finished the benefit. I don't have any benefit from it anymore. Now I am like someone who's watching it. Even if I'm getting paid for it, someone who is paid to be a watchman, he's responsible if he's negligent. But if it's a complete mistake, then he's not responsible. And so now I'm simply bringing it back for you. Therefore, on the way back, I'm not deriving benefit from it anymore. I'm not like a borrower, and therefore, I'm not responsible. Okay, so what do we see here? That even though in the first case there was no money exchanged, I didn't actually buy it, but if I receive benefit from taking it, using it, examining it, showing it to my in-laws, and that's a benefit to the buyer, then I am responsible. So that's similar to Shemuel's case. If I break it while I'm examining it, and it's a high ticket item, so that's a benefit to me to be able to do that. That's why I'm responsible if it breaks. Good. And last story here. Hahu saf sira tishkal chamara lezabune vela izaban. There we had a middleman who is trying to sell donkeys from the farmer, says, like, I have a lot of donkeys, can you go find someone to sell it? So this middleman is taking the donkey around, and he's not able to find a buyer. So he takes it out to the market, he takes it around to other people, no, can't find a buyer, so he's now going to return it back to the original farm, and something happens, and the donkey dies. Chaya Rav Nachman Shalomeh came to Rav Nachman, and they said, well, sorry, the middleman, you have to pay for it. All right, because it was under your watch. Now, Itiber Rava Rav Nachman, then Subah Halacha Chaya B'Chazara Patur. Rava questioned Rav Nachman based on the halacha that we just said, that if something breaks on the way there, on the way to show the merchandise, then the person is liable. That I understand. Why? Because the middleman is like borrowing it like a lawnmower, right? He has the benefit that he can show it to prospective buyers and potentially make a deal. So since he has benefit, he is like a borrower and he is responsible. But on the way back, that's it. He gave up. He says, I'm not going to sell it to anyone. Now he's simply returning it. When he's returning it, he doesn't get any benefit from it. So should not be like a borrower. And so therefore he should not be liable. So Rav Nachman, how come you said he's liable? He answered, Amarle, Hazara de Safsira holachahi, Dilu mashkach lezabune, afilu ababa de bete, mi la mezaben le. No, even the return trip of a middleman is the same as his leaving. Because, let's say he would find someone, he happened to see someone, even on the way back, even at the door of the house of the original farmer. There might be, someone else, some stranger there, who say, oh, look at that donkey, I want to buy it. And the middleman would then make a sale. So the middleman actually is ready to sell it, and is selling it, is offering it, is advertising everywhere he goes, even on the way back, even at the doorstep. And therefore the whole time he's considered a borrower who does receive benefit from the opportunity of holding on to the item, and that's why he is liable even in that case. And the last Mishnah of the day, Kunam she'ani nehener la'arelim mutar be'arele Yisrael v'asur b'mule umot ha'olam. Someone says, Korban, I am prohibited from having any benefit from anyone who's arel, who's uncircumcised. Now, if we take this literally, then we're going to have to check each person, uncircumcised or circumcised. But what we're going to see is that the word arelim does not mean physically if they have a circumcision or not, but rather is a general term that means those who are not Jewish are called arelim, even though many non-Jews, including Arabs, even in those days, in the Talmud, even before there was Islam, we saw somewhere else the Arabs were generally circumcised. Ancient Egyptians, many of them were circumcised. So it's not about technically whether they are or not. The word arelim is a catch-all to mean anyone who's not Jewish. So therefore, if someone says, I'm prohibited to anyone who's an arel, is permitted to Jews, all Jews, not only those who have a circumcision, but even a Jew who doesn't have a circumcision. For example, a Jew whose two brothers died from circumcision, then we say, okay, this is dangerous, right? His family has a problem, and they are not allowed to get a circumcision. that's fine. Even though that Jew is not circumcised, they're not included in the category of Arel, because that's how people use the word Arel, to mean anyone's not Jewish. And he's prohibited to those who are circumcised from other nations. So some Arab that has a circumcision, you cannot benefit from that guy, even though he said only an Arelim, and he's not technically an Arel. He's included in the category of Arel nevertheless. And the opposite would be the same thing. Shani nehenet lemulim. I am not going to derive benefit from those who are circumcised. That includes all Jews. Asur arele Israel. He is prohibited from all Jews, certainly those who are circumcised. Even those who are not circumcised are included in the category of mulim. But he's permitted to derive benefit from those who are circumcised from the other nations. Even though he said mulim are prohibited to me, if some Arab comes who is circumcised, he can derive benefit from him, because that's not what people mean. When they say mulim, it's an idiom that means Jews. Shehen ha'odla kiruya ela l'shem umot ha'olam shene'emar. Now, why is this so? Because it's not about the physically being uncircumcised, but rather odla is a way that other nations are called. They're called those who are not circumcised. And this is the way it's used in many Pisukim in the Torah. And the Mishnah itself will bring 3. This is a kind of unusual Mishnah. It brings a lot of Agadah and brings a bunch of Pisukim. Shene'emar, ki chol hagoyim arelim, v'chol bet Yisrael arle leb. Yirmiyah says all the other nations are physically uncircumcised, and the Jewish people are spiritually uncircumcised, uncircumcised of the heart. This is a negative thing about Jews, but it is making a distinction between those who are physically and not physically, and it says all non-Jews are uncircumcised. So even though that's not technically true, some non-Jews are physically circumcised. Nevertheless, they are called by the catch-all name Arelim. David talking about Goliath says, this uncircumcised Pelishti. Did David check? Did he know? No, it doesn't matter. It's just a derogatory name to talk about any non-Jews, including a Pelishti, Ha'arel. Ve'omer pen tismachna benot Pelishtim, pen ta'alozna benot ha'arelim. In this pasuk in Shemuel, it brings a parallelism between Pelishtim and Arelim. In other words, anyone who is Pelishti, who is not Jewish, is an Arel. Good. That's enough proofs. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer, Meusahi ha'olah shenitganu ba reshaim shneimar ki kol hagoyim arelim. Quoting one of those, the first pasuk again, Rabbi Elazar now goes on an Agadah and says that an olah is a disgraceful thing, is a disgraceful description. And that's why the Shaim are associated with having an odla. Kol goyim arelim. This is meant in a disparaging way. Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Gedola milah shenichretu alea shelosh esre beritot. And the opposite, Rabbi Yishmael says, having a brit milah is fantastic, is the greatest mitzvah. Look how there are 13 covenants that are signed because of it. Where do we see that? In Bereshit, Perek Yud Zayin, that paragraph where Hashem commands Abraham regarding Brit Milah, it says the word Berit 13 times. That's very significant. So yes, there you go. See, Berit 13 times is repeated for Berit Milah. Other good things. Rabbi Yosef Omer, Gedolah milah shedochat Shabbat chamura. Look how important Brit Milah is, that it overrides even Shabbat. Now Shabbat is very stringent, right? It's the worst punishment of Sikila, someone who overrides it. Nevertheless, if the 8th day of a baby falls out on Shabbat, we violate Shabbat and we perform the Brit Milah. Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha omer gedolah milah shelo nitla lo Moshe Sadik aleha melo sha'a. Look how important Brit Milah is, that Moshe was his punishment was not postponed for not doing Brit Milah even for a moment. In that famous scene when he gets to the Malon on the way, when Moshe is going back to Mitzrayim to save the Jewish people, this angelic being comes and threatens to kill. We're going to see in a minute whether he threatens to kill either Moshe or his son, because he didn't do Brit Milah on his son. He delayed it. And therefore, all Moshe's righteousness would not have saved him from the death penalty for delaying doing Brit Milah on his son. Rabbi Nechemiah Omer, Gedolah Milah shedochat negaim. Brit Milah is so great that it overrides nega. There's a halacha: if someone has a sara'at on his skin, you're not allowed to take a knife and take it off. You have to heal. You have to wait and heal it in other ways. You can't just cut it off. What if someone has a Brit Milah on the foreskin? Halacha is, and you have to do Brit Milah. Yes, you cut it off. Even though you're violating the halacha of nega, Brit Milah is more important. Rabbi Omer Gedolah Milah, shekol hamitzvot she'asa Avraham Avinu lo nikra shalem ad shemal shenemar hitarech lefanai v'yeh tamim. Abraham, all the mitzvot that Abraham did, right, and all the wonderful tests and everything, he was not called wholehearted until he does Brit Milah, because in Perek Yud Zayin, again, right before Hashem commands him to do Brit Milah, he says, walk before me and be wholehearted. How can you be wholehearted? Only when you do Brit Milah. That's when everything else that you did still not going to be called tamim. דבר אחר, גדולה מילה שמלא היא, לא ברא הקדוש ברוך הוא את עולמו שנאמר, כה אמר אדוני, אם לא בריתי יומם ולילה, חוקות שמיים וארץ לא שמתי. Milah is great, that if not for Brit Milah, Hashem would not have created the world, right? What's the point of creating the world if not that you're going to have people that are committed to this Brit, as shown through Brit Milah? As the Pasuk in Yirmiyah said, if not for my Berit, day and night, the Berit, meaning Brit Milah, that you have, no matter what you're doing or not doing, even if you're sleeping, you have the Brit Milah. If not for that Berit, I would never have made the laws of the heavens and the earth, the laws of nature, the heavens and earth themselves, I would not have created. This Pasuk is very important because the Midrash is actually not the Peshat. You see in the Peshat it continues and says, Gam zerei Yaakov v'David avdiim as bikach hatzarom moshlim el zerei Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov ki yashib et shivutam v'richamtim. The Peshat is, as surely as I made a berit with the day and the night and the heavens and the earth, that the laws of nature are going to continue forever, so too I will never reject the offspring of Yaakov and David. In other words, in the Peshat, this means that Hashem will never change the Berit, no matter what. Right? This is a guarantee. It's more guaranteed than the fundamental laws of day and night and nature. But in this Midrash, it takes it as actually a conditional, that the laws of nature are based on, are conditioned on people performing Brit Milah. So it puts a lot more responsibility on human beings to fulfill. Okay, we'll begin the Gemara on this. Tanya, Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha Omer, Gedolah milah shekol zichuyot she'asa Moshe Rabbeinu lo amdu lo keshenit Hashem in hamilah shene'emar vayifkesheu Hashem vayibakesh hamito. Right, so echoing what the Mishnah said, Rabbi Yoshua ben Korcha says, great is milah, because all of the merits that Moshe had did not stand for him, did not protect him when he was negligent about doing the Brit Milah, as it says in that scene in Shemot, that the Hashem met him and tried to kill Moshe for not doing Brit Milah on his son. So Rabbi says, how could you say that Moshe was neglectful of Milah? What do you mean? He was just lazy? He wasn't going to do Brit Milah? אלא כך אמר, אמור ועשה, סכנה היא שנאמר, ויהי ביום השלישי בהיותם כואבים. Rather, Moshe had a problem, because he had a child, but he was commanded to go to Egypt and save the people. Hashem said, go. So now, how is he going to fulfill both of them? He says, if I do Brit Milah on my son now, and then immediately go on a journey, that is dangerous, because we know that the third day is the most painful. As we know from the story in Shechem, on the third day, when they were the most in pain, that's when the sons of Yaakov took advantage and they killed the people in Shechem. So I can't do that. Amul ve'eshesh shelosha yamim. Should I do brit milah my son now while I'm still in Midian and then delay my trip for 3 days? I can't do that. HaKadosh Baruch Hu amar li, lech shuv Mitzrayim. Hashem said, now, go. You have to go now. So he didn't want to delay the trip, which is God's commandment. So he said, you know what? I better delay the brit milah and not do it now, and go on the trip without brit milah, and then when I get there, I'll do brit milah when I arrive. So it's not that Moshe was lazy and was not going to do brit milah. He had a good reason to delay it. And now, if so, why was he punished? And the answer is, it's because he did not circumcise his son at the first moment he could. First, he got to the hotel, he rented the room, he checked it out, and he was involved in the lodging first. And instead, he should have said, okay, I got here, the trip is over, now it's safe to do brit milah. He shouldn't have done brit milah right away, and then he should have unpacked his bags in the hotel afterwards. And so this is a nice midrash because it connects. And why is, who cares where he was? No, Bamalon means because he had talked about the malon, he dealt with the malon first. That's the reason why he was liable. One more paragraph. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omer, lo leMoshe Rabbeinu bikesh Satan laharog, ela leoto tinok shene'emar ki chatan damim ata li, seoreh ki mi karui chatan, have omer ze hatinok. Rashbag says that this angel of Hashem was not trying to kill Moshe, but it's called Satan here because as it's still also an angel of God or a representative of God's will to punish someone who's not doing the right thing. And so the Satan didn't want to kill Moshe himself, but rather the child. The child was the focus of attack because it was not circumcised. How do you know that? Because it says Chatan damim ata li. You are Chatan, a bridegroom of blood. Now, what does that mean? Who is called a bridegroom? Certainly, that would be the infant, since he's the one that is entering the covenant, just like a groom and a bride are entering into a deal, an agreement with each other. So too, a baby and Hashem are like a bridegroom and a bride who are entering an agreement together, and at the point when they do brit milah. And so therefore, if he was using the word chatan, that wouldn't make sense to call Moshe a chatan. He's not the one entering the brit, but rather his son is called the bridegroom, because he is the one that's entering. And so it was actually the son whose life was in danger for not having a brit milah. We'll continue more about the story tomorrow. Baruch Adonai L'Olam. Amen v'amen.